So good morning students. So in your last class already we have been studying regarding the Egyptian civilization and what are the importance of Egyptian civilization and what are the contributions of Egyptian towards the modern world. So we have been studied it. And we have been studying regarding the pyramids, why the pyramids were being built and what is the reason behind the pyramids. We have been studying. So today we will study regarding another civilization. Today we will study regarding another two civilizations which have been given their own contribution towards the mankind. So today we are going to study regarding the Mesopotamian civilization, and Chinese civilization. So today we are going to study regarding these two civilizations. So Mesopotamia or Mesopotamian civilization. So Mesopotamia is an area that lies in the valleys between the two rivers. So Mesopotamia, it is a area, it lies between the two rivers, a fertile area. It is when two rivers are there, middle the particular area is there. So quite naturally we have to think it is fertile. And many of the places described in the Old Testament can be seen here. So many of the places which are being described in the Old Testament, so which is related to the Bible. Which is related to the Bible. Old Testament means, so there are some points regarding it is a book related to the Bible. So many places which are being recognized in the Old Testament, those places can be seen in the Mesopotamian civilization. So the land which inspires, the inspiration or the fascination, is called the land between the rivers or Mesopotamia by the Greeks. The land which awakes means which zooms the mood, we can say that. And the land which has been fascinating, inspires, the fascinating. So that land is been called as the Mesopotamia or the land between the two rivers. So the land between the two rivers. So which are those two rivers? The two rivers are the Euphrates and the Tigris. So these are the two rivers, Euphrates and the Tigris. So the land lies between these two rivers is been called as the Mesopotamia by the Greeks. So here Euphrates and Tigris had made the Western Asian barren land very fertile. It was the fertility of the area that attracted the people. The barren lands were there, but these two rivers made it fertile. And when the land became fertile, it attracted the people. Since food crops could grow easily, when the land is fertile, food crops or anything we can grow easily with the less effort. We can grow easily. And the northern hill tribes and the southern nomadic tribes of the desert tried to establish their control over the Mesopotamia. So when the land is fertile, when they came to know that the land is fertile, they started to two tribal groups, northern and the southern. They started to conquer or they started to have control over that particular area. And the rival between these two tribes for the number of endless conflict, the rival between this northern and the southern, number of endless conflict. However, in the midst the conflict emerged, the civilization of the strong and the brave race. The Sumerians were the first one to evolve the systematic writing of Mesopotamia. For 30 centuries, those who entered in the fertile valley, for the 30 centuries, many of them entered in the fertile Mesopotamian fertile valley. In that, Sumerians are the first. Who entered the fertile valley. And next comes the Babylonians, Assyrians, and the Persians used the systematic. Sumerians, Babylonians, and the Assyrians. And they used the systematic writing, which was been called as cuneiform. So for the first time, a systematic form of writing was been introduced in the Mesopotamian civilization. So that is been called as the cuneiform. So Sumerians are the first to establish the control over that particular area, Mesopotamian area, and Sumerians, Babylonians and the Assyrians, they lived. So they introduced a systematic form of writing. So that has been called as the cuneiform. That has been called as the cuneiform. The central area of the civilization was the southern part of the valley between the Euphrates and the Tigris River, the central area. From the olden times, this area has been referred to the Babylon. From the olden times, this area was referred to the Babylon. And the northern part of the Babylon was called as Akkad. The northern part of the Babylon was called as Akkad. And next, the northern part of the Babylon was Akkad, and the southern part was called as the Sumer. Southern part was called as the Sumer, and the part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. The part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. The part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. The part of Mesopotamia was Assyria. So this is regarding the earlier part of the how the Mesopotamian civilization came to enlighten, who were there, how they started. So this is it. So next here, before going to the history of the Mesopotamia is a story of the endless hatred and the conflict. The history of the Mesopotamia is being called the story of the endless hatred and the conflicts. Endless hatred and the conflict. And the Sumerians, the Sumerians are the hilly tribes from the north were the first to arrive here. Sumerians were the hilly tribes. They were the first to arrive towards the Mesopotamian area. And next, they who used to worship their god on the top of the hills. They used to worship their god on the top of the hills. After coming to the plains, built an artificial hills and established their place of worship there. So just listen to me. Sumerians, they lived in the hilly region and they worshipped their god in the top of the hills. Now they have moved towards the plains, fertile plains. They have moved to fertile plains. Now they have built the artificial hills. They have built the artificial hills for the purpose of worship. For the purpose of worship, they have built the artificial hills. And these artificial hills, they are been called as Ziggurat. These artificial hills, they are been called as Ziggurat. And they did not know how to build the stairs, and therefore they surrounded them with the sloping galleys. So Ziggurat were being built, but they were been not knowing how to build the stairs or the steps. So they made it the plain slope itself. And the Jews called these as the Tower of Babel. The Jews, they called it as the Tower of Babel. Jews, they called it as the Tower of Babel. And next, before going to the next part, we will study here the law code of Hammurabi. The law code of Hammurabi. Law code of Hammurabi. So here, this law code of Hammurabi. Law code of Hammurabi. So the main source of the law code of Hammurabi are the rock edict found in the 1901, in the year 1901. So today this has been kept in the Louvre Museum of the Paris. In the Paris it has been kept. Hammurabi's law enforced the logic, tit for tat. We can say in an easy word we have to say means tit for tat. If any person he has been injured, the right eye of any person, so that person's right eye will be injured. ಇನ್ನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಟಿಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಟ್ಯಾಟ್. ಈಗ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಅವನ ಎಡಗೈಗೆ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಆ ಕೋಡಲ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನನ್ನ ಎಡಗೈಯನ್ನು ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ವಾಸ್ ಬಿನ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ದಿ ಟಿಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಟ್ಯಾಟ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ. Tit for tat. Why this particular policy has been introduced? Why this Hammurabi? Why this particular? He was a king. Why this particular policy or why this particular law code he has been used? To check the crime rate. To check the crime rate. To check the crime rate, this particular law code was been introduced by the Hammurabi. To check the crime rate. So here, by this, all the sections, all the sections were being protected. Upper class, lower class, any caste, all were being protected. So by this there was a prosper and the crime rate was low by the law code of Hammurabi. The Sumerians had entered the Mesopotamia in the 4000 BC. The Sumerians had entered the Mesopotamia in the 4000 BC. Later they were being overpowered. Later they were being overthrown or they were being defeated by the Akkadians, one of the tribe of the Arabian desert. These are known as the Semites. After the 1000 years, the Akkadians came to be ruled by the Amorites. Means Akkadians were being defeated by the Amorites. So another Semitic tribe, the most famous king of the Amorites was the Hammurabi. The most famous king of the Amorites was the Hammurabi. Just now I have been explained regarding the Hammurabi's law code. So he got built a fabulous palace for himself in Babylon. He framed the law, he framed the codes of justice and made Babylon considered as the administrated kingdom, whole of the world. And the Hittite who came later occupied the valley and destroyed that they could and carried away. The Hittites were defeated by the Assyrians. Means here for that particular fertile area, one after another, they have been attacked. Then earlier itself hatredness and the endless conflict over the Mesopotamian civilization. One after another tribal people or one after another tribal group, they came there, they attacked, they lived for certain years. So next another group came there, another tribal group, they attacked, they conquered, they ruled there, next another group. So it was continuous. So in the earlier itself I mentioned hatredness and the conflict, endless hatredness and the conflict over the Mesopotamian region. And Assyrians occupied the whole of the West Asia and Egypt till about the 7th century, collected the taxes from all the people. The another Semitic group, Chaldeans, re-established the Babylon in the 7th century and developed it into the prominent capital of that time. Nebuchadnezzar was the greatest king among them. He encouraged the study of science, but the Chaldeans came under the attack of the Persians in the 6th century BC. The 2,200 years later, the Alexander transformed this place of Semitic people into the Greek provinces. So after 200 years, Alexander made it as the provinces of the Greek. This Mesopotamian region was been merged in the Greek provinces by Alexander. After the rule of the Romans, the Turks who followed Alexander, this civilization declined and turned into the wilderness. This civilization, after the last, it turned into the wilderness. But the important contribution towards the world by this civilization. So here the Hanging Garden of Babylon. The Hanging Garden of Babylon. So the legendary Hanging Garden were created on the banks of the river Euphrates around the 7th century BC. So this was one of the 7 wonders of the old world. So Hanging Garden was one of the 7 wonders of the old world. So this Hanging Garden, but surprisingly, to note the Babylonians cuneiform records which made the mention the city, the place, the walls, totally the silent about the Hanging Garden. Most of the scholars, they were not knowing regarding it. So Hanging Garden means it is not a garden is hanging. So on the palace, so it was how it was being built on the palace. On the palace, it was the garden plants, bushes, each and everything. How we make the today on the rooftop, how we how we create the garden, artificial garden. Like that, the artificial garden was being created. Not artificial, a garden itself which was being created. So those leaves, the roots were being hanging towards the ground. So it was been called as the Hanging Garden. So garden was not hanging on the without any support. So building was there, the palace was being built. On that palace, the steps were being made, the terrace were being made. On the terrace, the leaves, garden was being created on that. So those leaves roots. So they were hanging. So like it is being called as the hanging. So it looks wonderful. So it was the hanging garden was built for the purpose of the Nebuchadnezzar's wife. Nebuchadnezzar's wife. So this is regarding the Mesopotamian civilization. This is regarding the Mesopotamian civilization. So at last the Mesopotamia, it was being merged with the Greek Empire by Alexander. So next we will move toward the another important civilization. Next we will move toward the another important civilization. It is none other than the Chinese civilization. The Chinese civilization. So it is a special feature. It is a special feature of all the ancient civilizations that were established on the river plain. All the ancient civilizations, they have been established on the river bank, on the river plain itself. Even the Chinese civilization, it was established established on the river plain itself. The Chinese civilization was the expectation to this, but the rivers which led to the establishment of the Chinese civilization was known as the Chinese sorrow. The river which was the main reason for the establishment of the Chinese civilization, that river was being called as the China's sorrow. That river was being called as the China's sorrow. So none of the China's sorrow. So this was the Hongwo River. Hongwo River. None other than the Hongwo River. Hongwo River. After the flood, the river changed its course in the unpredictable manner and polluted the houses and the agricultural lands. It would render all the channels useless. All the channels useless. So this was the reason of the people of that area referred to it as the symbol of sorrow. So after this Hongwo River was called the China sorrow. So after the flood, the complete area would be useless. In the unpredictable manner it was changed. The houses were being floating, all the channels were being useless. So it has been called as the China's sorrow. According to other archaeological evidence, the first ruling family of the Chinese civilization was the Shang dynasty. So it ruled in the period of between the 18th century BC to 12th century BC. Under the rule of the dynasty, the people had developed a wonderful culture by the 14th century BC. The Shang dynasty was overpowered or overthrew by the neighboring Chou dynasty. It was overthrown. So here the Chou dynasty continued the good tradition of the Shang culture and ruled till the 250 BC. Till 250 BC, Chou dynasty ruled. So it was the Chou dynasty. There was a section of officials below the kings. The king allotted the portion of land to them, to the officials. In return, they have to render the military and the other services towards the king. Means they have to support the king in each and every time. They have to support the king. So even in social stratification, the communities of the next level, like merchants, craftsmen, apart from them, we need a great majority of the present, the lowest strata of the social hierarchy were the slaves. The lowest were the slaves. All the communities were there, and the lowest were the slaves. The prisoners of war were made as the slaves by the king. Remember this thing. The Shang kings spent a quite amount in time of conquest and the battles. Hence the army was the prominent. The soldiers enjoyed a dignified place in the society. Soldiers wore the bronze helmet and metal armories, the bronze daggers, stars, bows, arrows, iron tipped arrows which they used to have been found. The people of the Shang dynasty depended on agriculture. They had a well organized system of irrigation. They used to grow plenty of rice. Irrigation was there, and they used to grow plenty of rice. So this was regarding the Shang dynasty. The Chinese used to wear a cotton dress. They used the silk to engage in the silkworm rearing silkworm, rearing, silk, manufacture was being prominent industry. Chinese used to make the excellent pots and had learned to make the various objects from the proclaim. I'll say later what is meant by proclaim. So it was the custom of the Chinese to worship their ancestors. It was the custom of the Chinese to worship their ancestors. Even we worship our ancestors. So they believed that the dead man became a spirit and had the spirit in the and had a spirit had a special power. ನಾವು ಕೂಡ ದೇವ ಭೂತ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಂಬ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಆತ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಂಬ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್, ಅದೇ ಸೇಮ್ ಇದೆ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ. And the dead bodies were buried along with the various wooden articles, pot, bronze, vessels and objects. The tomb of the king used to be quite large. The king's tomb used to be quite large. The Chinese tradition of writing began with the picture and got transferred into the ideographic script. Writers used to write on the silk and the bamboo strips. Proclaim and the Great Wall are the exceptional contribution of the Chinese towards the mankind. Proclaim and the Great Wall of China. So now we'll study the Great Wall of China. First we'll study the Great Wall of China. So here the Great Wall of China. Chinese empire consists of the many small provinces. 7 big straits were created bringing a small provinces into them. Every state that was created thus constructed the wall along the boundary to protect for the protection. Emperor Qi ordered the walls of the northern Chinese state to connect it with the southern Chinese state, and this enabled the northern walls to ward off the attack of the invaders from the north. The construction of the Great Wall began in the 7th century BC and continued till the 16th century. From 7th century to 16th century BC. The walls out the part where they repaired and strengthened. When the work was completed, it stretched over the more than 5,000 kilometers. When the work was completed, so it stretched over the more than 5,000 kilometers. So it is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It is one of the 7 wonders of the world. For the protection of their kingdom from the enemies, this particular Great Wall of China has been constructed. So it has been taken 7 years to construct that particular wall, and so when it has been completed, how many kilometers? 5,000 kilometers. So it is one of the wonders of the world. It is one of the wonders of the world. So next, proclaim. Just listen to me, proclaim. So it is believed that the proclaim originated in China. Originated in China. Semi-proclaim objects were used from 1600 BC. By the time of the region of the Han dynasty, glazed proclaim have been developed. It had developed into the exoit art. The ancient Chinese were used to bury the dead bodies along with the proclaim pots, animals and the objects loved most during their lives. Proclaim is nothing but it is like a paste which we used to make the pots, except pots and many other artificial things. And by using that particular proclaim, we can say that dead bodies not seized fast. So proclaim is the material. So we can say that some of the artificial material. So ಈಗ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಡಿಕೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಮಣ್ಣನ್ನು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಬೇರೆ ಆದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್, ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಮಿಶ್ರಣ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಇದದು ಏನಂತಾರೆ, ಈ ಪಾಟು ಅಥವಾ ಬೇರೆ ಒಂದು ಆಟ ಸಾಮಾನು ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಉಳಿದ ಯಾವುದಾರ ಒಂದು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ವಸ್ತುವನ್ನು ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಅದು ಹಾಳಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಭಾಳ ವರ್ಷ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದು ಅದು ಚೈನಾದ ಒಂದು ಕೊಡುಗೆ. So these are the 2, Great Wall of China and the proclaim are the 2 contributions by the Chinese civilization. So this is regarding the Chinese Mesopotamia and Chinese civilization. So anything else? If you are having any doubt, you can message me. So thank you.